Got that off, please, right, what you're doing? Got the hard stuff for later. Yes. Lots of that. Oh. Where was it? In the back. On the counter. Right where I left it. Yeah, so I'm super excited that everybody's moving home, that they're gonna be home, yeah. They're coming out to look at houses mid-September, but they don't plan on moving into the spring.
The lease market is stabilizing and it's not. If you looked at the Zillow estimate on my house, I could sell it for $180,000 more than what I looked.
That's why I don't own a home.
No, which I would love to do, but I can't buy anything that's gonna maintain the value for which I paid for it. And I just looked at my, no.
Sarah Palm owned a house in Minneapolis, they paid 50,000 for asking, no inspections, just take the offer and market there.
Yeah.
People out bid,
Yeah.
By lots, so. So I want them to get their money out of their house.
Yeah.
You know, and then we can find something bigger.
Yeah. Are they in Minneapolis, or?
They're in Bloomington, Bloomington.
Trying to find this in. It's just north. Troy.
And their house is I did 375, it's a 1950s ranch. Small bedrooms upstairs, a master bedroom, in the basement, they've had a lot of problems.
I just think you have like a lot of baby boomers who have like multiple houses.
Yeah.
It's maybe it's just-
Oh, yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of homes.
So I'm gonna get you the rest of the stuff. People actually have a lot of houses.
Sorry, post-wedding, like blues, or we just finally like, thank God it's done, and now I just get to live, yeah. Wait, yeah, if you choose to have children, it's very pretty, but that's pretty good. Okay. Anyone can stay here. Oh, yeah. Something wrong. Something wrong.
Think we'll have a big crowd tonight?
Well, because you're here, of course.
Huh?
Because you're here, of course.
No.
How you doing?
I'm getting better. I get my, shots in my knees and my hip, which I hope to get in the next couple of days.
They're helping out?
Huh?
And they're helping?
Yeah, what I did, I had a, let me tell my. Oh, this is the,
That's
oh,
planning.
where am I writing?
Yeah. You
Oh,
can
that's
take
good.
them close to me.
I've probably never heard of CDAP. You ever heard of CDAP?
You know, I have, just remember what, is that like the chicken liver stuff?
It's, it's you, it's the worst infection you can possibly get from it.
Okay, yeah,
Controls your entire,
similar to like immersive, but
yeah,
more aggressive. Yes, okay.
I mean, I got that real bad.
Oh, goodness.
2 months ago, month and a half. In fact, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be here.
It did the alert call?
No, what happened was, I went to, I worked, I felt integrated, so I went to service, June 26th.
Okay.
In Omaha, National Cemetery. I got home about 2 o'clock, and I said to my wife, I'm gonna take a shower and then take a nap. I'm just not feeling fine. Did not know at the time, my heart was starting to fluctuate, and this goes off and turns alarm to my son. He was only 6 blocks away. And so he shows up, and his neighbor 2 doors is also a nurse.
Oh, that's not,
You know, working for the third plan working.
yeah.
She said, let me take a couple of items quick. She said, oh, stop. The car was going to the emergency room. So I got over there and took next to a couple of things, and next thing I know, I'm in ambulance on the way to Methodist in Omaha. 2 weeks. Legacy, 2 weeks. He came home for a couple weeks now. But, it's just, infectious disease guy said, and this usually affects men, older men in their 70s or so, man. And, he said, you can let you take a nap. You can let this one off, you wouldn't be here. Wow. The only way I can tell you probably here now is you never smoked a cigarette, so your lungs will probably.
Able to handle that.
Exactly work.
Yeah.
But, you know, we don't know, you can catch it anywhere, even in a hospital. It's so,
Right.
it's so, yeah, and I just, it's the first time in my life it's ever happened.
Wow.
Feel, I turned 80 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations, happy birthday.
My kids, my son lives here, and my two,
Yeah.
but my daughter, they moved to Australia. Which took my 2 granddaughters.
What a neat
My
adventure for
daughter
them.
in my bedroom on my birthday. She flew all the way from Australia.
Oh.
And she was quite frank. She said, Dad, I talked to your doctor, and he said, I better come and see you. You know, I said, so then, hospice called.
Oh.
And in my business, when they call hospice, that's
Yeah.
usually the other way around.
Yeah.
I said to the office, came in, like, hospice? I said, you like it? He said, no, this isn't after you're done and die. This is take care of you, and get you, just watch so you don't fall,
Yeah.
take a shower, and help you and all that. So that's been going on for like 2 weeks now, so it works out fine. I come up here, I use my thing last time. My wife said, geez, this is what this is for.
Yeah.
Pulled up, gets in the car, so, no problem.
Yep.
But other than that, I feel very darn good.
Good for you. Wow.
It's just, what, I tell you, I looked up at the computer, in fact, I've been on the website almost every day.
Well, stop doing that.
Some people that, wow.
They only give you the really bad ones, so they don't do that.
No,
You know, your doctor's gonna get very angry when you tell him you
my
like web it to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's a family friend. I'll tell you, she's been over a lot, probably even said, he's like, I said, where did I get this? We don't know.
No.
We gave you medicine, that is, put my last bill on, Friday, my last bill for that,
Yeah.
and, just basically, they bill, Prior to this, back in 14, I had a stem cell next, cancer. Multiple myeloma. So,
Wow.
I had oblivion with the problem, but.
Did it make you more susceptible? Yeah.
I have access to the subject, kind of cost. Cause I got 4 doctors, specialists, working,
Yeah.
and they're all calling me all the time, every day. Including my phone guy,
Yeah.
Dr. Fisher. And he called me when I was in medicine, he said, you're dealing with, doesn't work well with that. Cowboys don't put in. Some chicken, whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
Shot.
Yeah.
Doesn't work well with one of those coaches for season. He said, when you get over the hill, call me. I don't care what day it is, we'll get you right in it. Yeah, because we got a little arthritis and.
Yeah.
Bone on bone.
Mm.
But that's the only thing, you know, other than that, I feel fine. That guy came back, you know, that part really good and. I got a lot of phone calls, I got a lot of support.
You do.
And here at the council, I can't believe how many guys call me up and,
Oh, good.
you know, I'm the oldest person ever running and I did not know that. And,
Well, now you gotta maintain it.
Brad Ellis, I think, called me up, he said, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 79, and he said, you know me what, 82 a year? I said, yeah. And he said, are you gonna run again? I said, I don't know, but probably not. But we got a couple of guys when I work that, you know, will definitely run, so it won't be big.
Yeah.
But, I'm enjoying it.
Good.
It's good, you know. Good to see, it's good to hear the phone calls I get. I got the largest ward, Ward 1. So,
Yeah.
well, 8th Street on.
Okay.
So,
Travis been nice to you? If not, I'll take him out.
Huh?
Is Travis been nice to you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. If not, let me know.
you're good. Yeah. Oh, and that's the other thing. We were having 4 or 5 hours. You know,
Yeah.
we started at 7 o'clock. And I'm one of those guys, I got about, I was counting up for my old age. 22 different things I've been in the fall. I'm still active in about 4. President of the issue, been there 30 years, president for 25. In fact, they named the boardroom after me.
There you go.
Yeah, I was happy about that. I'm the commander of the American Legion. I'm a lifetime of the VFW. All these things. And, you know, I enjoy it. I use my meetings in 1 hour, period. And what was going on here was ridiculous. People call me up and they say, you know, what's going on? Why did we have so many questions? They did not put the defense check. Jackson was there for 36 years. He wouldn't allow that. I said, well, we didn't have that, Open Meetings Act on board. Before they used to go down on Tuesday night and have dinner down at Al and then up there. We'd already discussed the hard stuff and different voting. Hour. 15 minutes, so. It's good, I'm gonna get through.
You can.
And we'll see what happens this next election, but both Yerger and Ellis are up.
Your voice of reason that sometimes required.
Well, and people call me, they're screaming, yell at the phone, and I'm a very mellow guy, and so let's hold it. Now, I'm down. Tell me what the problem is. Well, I got this done, I said, okay, we can take care of that. I'll be out, let's do what you talked about, and I said, we'll do our best, right, but you know, we can only do so much, but
Therein lies the problem is there's
Yeah.
too many things that they expect.
he didn't have fast, yeah.
Well, not only that, but the city can do it. It's not. a city
No, you're
problem,
right.
it's a civil
That's still a budget, you're right.
Well, it's not only that, but generally it's just through civil issues. City has zero input on
You're right,
a lot of things that people do on the city.
you're right.
And it puts the city in that spot.
I think, well, sure, except, you know, they work on, well, it's a good example. In fact, it's on the police report.
Oh,
Well, I took the phone, I've never seen it before. I took the phone, my wife was reading it, but then we live on one of Claremont Brothers. We call it the canal, the Claremont Canal.
okay.
It's been there since 1960, 58 or somewhere. It was a railroad spur, if you can believe that, long time ago. That's why it's crooked. Claremont, 16. That's why it's crooked.
Okay.
Anyhow, we live right outside it. They didn't leave that this year. So Jamie went and called that phone number. Within an hour, they were there. We laughed.
There you go.
I wish they'd pick up the grass, but they didn't.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, I don't care if you weed whack, and I don't want to get up, you know, this high before you weed whack. The other thing is, if you would bring a backhoe in there once a year and dig out in front of the culverts, we wouldn't have a flooding problem. Right now, the water can't run all the way down here. It just gets blocked up. The culvert's been there forever.
Yeah.
It's about that much running through, and that's a big issue. I'm working on getting it.
There you
You know,
go.
they couldn't get it done. You know, they put concrete on the side.
Like, it's-
Yeah, yeah, we should have put it all away, like they did over here. Concrete's all more expensive.
That it is.
Anyhow. Thanks for listening to me.
Always.
I'm Ollie.
What's up, Mr. Landholm?
Everything.
I wasn't talking about you.
Thanks, I'm glad you didn't.
Always good to see you.
Yeah. I miss you coming to airport meetings.
You know, yeah, I'll make sure, I gotta put it on my calendar, you know, I'm sorry, I will be there this time.
And I remember that.
I got it written on my calendar.
It's the third Friday of the month.
Third Friday of the month. Once I got it on my calendar, I'll be there.
They've been meeting in the new building,
I think, I was just gonna ask you, the new building? Super.
which is not done.
Well, I'm sure of that. There's little things, all right? Just little things.
Yeah, it's a minor one that I found.
I looked at the, original plans and all that. And the contractor. I probably wouldn't have chosen him. Yeah. Well. First of all, they should let people know exactly what they were doing and when it was gonna be done. That part of it.
That's all advertised.
If they say it's gonna take 2 years, then okay, let's get it done. They didn't do that. And,
Yeah, it was all
I
advertised.
was saying, hey, this thing, you know, us trying to keep people up to date. Well, we try to, that's why we don't get people at the city council meetings.
Anyway, out there on the outside,
Yeah,
there's about 6 light fixtures.
there's what?
6 light fixtures that are mounted to a column underneath the canopy.
Yeah,
When it rains, water comes right behind them in a column. And when it rains real hard, like it did about 3 weeks ago, now coming this Friday,
oh, yeah.
the water will just come right out of the light fixture. Wow. Somebody messed up.
And you know, water leakage, be a big item with people.
Well, this don't really,
Laverne is in my ward.
yeah,
I can't tell you how many times we've been out there, and we did, you know, like, first of all, I told them, we're not done. But we did make a mistake by building that berm a little bit closer to the backyard. Wasn't supposed to be that close. Supposed to be about 20 feet further west. Anyhow, I went out there one day and the guy said, hey, they're digging a big hole in my backyard. And I said, I went out there, and I said, that, first of all, that's not your backyard, that's the city property. I said,
How are you? Good, how are you?
I said, we're gonna, landscape, it will look nice, when it's all done.
I just take that.
It might take 6 months to a year. It's not done. Well, then the thing came in with the berm.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna be further west. Further west.
like I understood it, maybe that was wrong, that became an inside deal with Brian. That dirt pile.
Yeah.
Mr. Von Baron called him.
Oh, yeah, he's my number one.
Prior to this event, that happened.
Yeah.
And he's calling me about a sidewalk in front of one of the properties he owns in the driveway area.
Okay.
We got a letter from the city that he has to fix it. And he says, the city created the problem. And I said, who in the city created the problem? Was it the utility department? Was it the street department? Was it the park and rec? He just said city. I find it interesting. So anyway, it's getting close about noon. I'll come out there and see what's going on. If I want to eat something, then I'll come out. So I went out there, looked, went to talk to him. Here I had taken off, gone downtown, and talked to Brian about that area
Yeah.
out there, plus this other event.
Yeah.
And anyway, go look at it and going, Paul, never told you this, but figure, you know what? That's your contractor that put in your sewer pipe and your water line in the same trench. And they didn't set, they didn't tamp it in good enough. Now we start getting moisture. And the panel sunk there.
I see, yeah,
But he was throwing the blame on the big city here.
we had a lot of those contractors. The job out there.
Oh my gosh, the weather is incredible.
Well, then we had, it's rain here, but I can get you out. Remember that event?
The neighbors always come over and we get together and stuff. They were all doing stuff.
This rain is west. So here's our second
So.
one. Okay. 80.
We also went to own
Here's
a
the-
house tonight.
Here's the future 32nd, if we're gonna ever get it out.
Like, no, it's downtown.
Now then, when you got this is,
It was brought it up, it's like,
we put
Denver, this is just
here with
trying to
Jason
be fun. It's a little bit
Work,
more.
work. Where I get on the-
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a meeting called
Yeah.
Monday.
I
The lady that was-
got a friend of mine, he was like to the state
Brought
station,
her
they
up.
go to the very
We
much,
brought
and they-
that part.
we do that, we do it overnight.
It actually
It was like this water
fills
bottle,
up the pond.
there's a.
They make condiments, they got food. Yeah, why go out and see what's going on? Depending on how-
So that's
They're
really.
pumping water in the old frac right. It could be up here, you're living here, that was where the train.
My kids and I went out.
That goes along the here, side, and all there, and, you
I
know,
did work with my group, so. then-
and it's for them.
You know, they're 11 and 15.
They're in a big
So
field.
throw them in the jungle, throw
But
them
well,
out, bury them and go.
And look at the,
Our confirmation.
the,
Stayed overnight at the
storage.
I survived it in.
Wow.
Down here, and,
Duct tape and baseball bat.
find out.
That would have been like so much great.
No,
Wow.
they were really good.
Those, no grading, but we know fix the vector in here.
You know, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
So what am I getting into here? And then I was stay overnight.
So, water comes across, and it comes up the street. Our flood. There's, cool. Big blame on the. Yeah. And it's about-
Teeny.
No. Now. Take that off. Somebody, I don't know if the guys.
No, but you guys don't have to hear like any of our- Crazy, but I'll find out.
Drain out into.
So we went, a few years ago, and we went to and there was a Star Wars.
Not quite high anymore, right? I like
Big house on Blackstone, and it's on the corner. And, yeah, but it is like, it is 70s in every capacity from menu items to drink items to things being shown on the TV. It was, and their whole thing is tachos. So it's tater tots that are chips, that are the nacho format.
Yeah.
And then the Sam Elliott is what my husband drank.
Oh, my money.
Course like.
I knew you were gonna ask me that.
Well, that's okay. You know that I won. Don't worry. Don't worry. I was surprised. Well, leaving that game and see what I got in the book.
I have Travis.
This luncheon's gone.
And my husband said that he had kind of a strange room. But as for the tickets on the hall. And on way home on Sunday, you really said. Yeah.
Well, so I didn't.
Oh, how about this?
A lot of things Tuesday.
Well,
Yeah.
we're not having a regular.
As far as, yes, the agenda I reviewed,
Okay.
it is all those things in order, legal presentation, you guys discuss. Did you bring like snacks?
I don't have, so I think I know where to.
We need something.
Well, I don't have, I don't. Oh, okay, so just need to share.
Oh, yeah, he sent him the login info.
Huh?
He sent him the login.
Yeah.
That went through all right.
So they should be trying to get on now. You will let me know. Yeah.
Let's get the first string tonight.
No, it's called, Travis Adventure 5 Tuesdays in a row, and he likes his children, so I gave him. I have no volleyball game, no football game tonight, so I said, you tell me about this.
Good. Taco Tuesday.
Yeah.
What's that? Taco Tuesday, yeah, must be starting.
I've had him swimming, I think I've had him swimming, I go for his life.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
He's drinking, I'm good with. Cooking, let me stick with jam.
I don't think anybody would come to our house.
So I think that's a good job when he's trying to do it. He's actually, I think that he is a better cook than I am. Because he is so much. We have now an understanding that we're home first and where we should go, I'm hungry and they're the ones there. Not that
All right up front.
How's it going, Mayor?
Good, thank you.
You survived your weekend.
We survived. Yep.
If you did barely, you did it right. I'm good. See you later. That's fine. Thank you.
Well, Tyler, what's going on?
This is, I'm kind of just realizing that they're doing this remotely and they're not here. So I'm thinking we might have problems actually hearing this room. Because maybe we don't do the remote. without the roll. Going like this.
Shoot.
So I think.
Hey, Vern.
Well, we can talk to Jennifer about putting them on.
He's got plans for Taco Tuesday? Okay, yes. All right. The whole, that is awesome.
And Friday night, we're hitting a Rangers game, so
Good for you.
it is called celebrating Jen surviving Patrick. So we just thought to let you know, but if you need it.
That's cause for celebration.
Oh, that's sainthood, let's be honest. Yeah. You've seen her office, Joey. You've seen the papers surrounding her. Yeah.
Well, that'll be fun.
It'll be good. Just, if you need something, just go that route.
Okay.
Somebody-
Friday afternoon to Monday.
Yes.
I think we'll be fine.
We're figure it out. Are you going to the volleyball game tomorrow?
No, I'm gonna watch it on TV.
Because they are pushing hard to blow that attendance rate. My daughter, and her whole volleyball team is, they just opened the upper level at $10. Yeah, it's according to Creighton's recent meeting thing. But my daughter and her whole high school team are going because a player from Gretna is playing for Creighton, so they're all going to sports guys. Seriously, we saw. Okay. So my daughter is about 16. Yes. Well, there's more than one. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
Hey, Joy.
Do you know they're opening a second case for next year? So my kid will stay in school, right?
How are you?
Yes.
This is your first official meeting, huh? Well, glad you're here.
Oh. Thank you. I was wondering. if we could-
Can he test? Can you test them, Tyler?
For evaluation. And for the students.
Thank you.
So I have been.
Jennifer, do you have one of their cell phone numbers?
My daughter was going in. First grade, and so.
It's
You'll use
there.
I thought they were gonna be here.
What's that?
I thought they were gonna be here.
I will let you know. See, you know how to run.
Yeah, that's going and up so that we can broadcast out, but we don't have people contact to call us anymore. That's when Brian was sitting there doing all of that, all their stuff. But I think what we do is we just get them on a cell phone, put the cell phone on the podium and it broadcasts out. But I think that's what she's working on. But I'm expecting there will be a lag between the video and the audio.
I know. We can run. That you are on my own.
Maybe if we get that laptop and just take the volume off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be.
Carl? How are we? Good.
Can you get your email?
I don't know how much that's going to change. Yeah, it's gonna make it. They're still gonna have. ABM, the ones downtown, it's still good. Yeah, that's military. Yeah. Well, that military is broad, it's not so. Especially ones that come from that. We've got north and trying to turn west. They're big. If the people are going east, they're going to the state corner of that. He didn't make the corner.
Steve.
My phone with the mic, and we'll see how that works.
Here with our
Hold on.
future.
All right, can you say test?
We're close to applying, so the guidelines came out, October 3rd is gonna be when they're gonna open up applications. So they're gonna be,
That's
people aware of that.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what's going on with it. When I tried to inform us that if it's being shot in the arm for us.
Huge.
Or what that.
Huge. Yep. Tyler.
Oh.
And it's coming over on the speaker.
Yes, that's good. You can hear that.
Is there gonna be any feedback or no?
Yeah, it sounds better. We moved it away from the computer, so it sounds better over here. And,
Okay.
yeah, I'll turn the volume up and you can start sharing your screen. We'll let the mayor kick this off in a sec.
Let me know when you're ready, Jennifer. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody. This is a special joint city council and planning commission meeting. Time is 5:53. The Opens Meeting Act's posted on the rear wall. We'll do roll call for the city council.
Gibson. Ellis. Vaughn. Ganem.
Here.
Yerger. Jensen. Sukram. Leg Band. 7 council members are present, Mayor.
Now we'll have planning commission.
Warsaw. Right. Sawyer. Carlson. Nielsen.
Here.
Lample.
Here.
Lathrop. Here. McKay.
Okay, item 4 is a presentation of the draft comprehensive plan. Again, we have House Sale Levine, Nick Davis on Zoom, and he's going to be able to share presentation of where we're at. This has again been over an 18-month process to get to this point where we have a draft of the comprehensive plan that hopefully every one of you have a copy of that. And again, looking forward to hearing from Nick and seeing where we're at right now with the draft plan. So Nick.
Okay, all right, well, so I assume, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, you can see my screen, sounds like you can hear me. So, okay, well, thanks, Mayor, for setting that up. And what I'm gonna do is go through our first kind of preview of the overall comprehensive plan and just give you an update of where we're at in the process. And we're getting pretty close here in the home stretch in terms of, this is the first time that you're seeing the entire document pulled together. You know, all of the elements are incorporated. There's a couple of fine tuning that still needs to happen. But this is the first time we've had a chance to present it to anybody. So this is a meeting that wasn't originally a part of our timeline, so that's why we're doing it virtually. We're still going to come out and do a more thorough presentation. So I wanted to hit the high points, knowing that you've had about a week and a half to review this document. I'm not expecting you to have reviewed all of it, but I am hoping by the time we get out there and we do our in-person meeting, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions. So today's kind of an overview. Here's where we're at. Here's what's been done. We'll take some questions. And so what I want to go through is the planning process itself real quick. We'll go over the complete comprehensive plan, and then we'll talk next steps. So the planning process, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, 6 steps was what we originally identified to prepare the comprehensive plan. We're all the way through now into that comprehensive plan document adoption. So we're in the final stages here of getting this process completed, starting to take this through planning commission and city council for ultimately for adoption. The comprehensive plan itself is broken up into 8 chapters, and I'm going to go through, it's a lot of content. I'm sure if you've looked at it, it's about 130 pages. So I'm not going to go line by line through this. I'm going to, again, go through this chapter by chapter, and I put some pauses in at each chapter point before we jump to the next, just to get your feedback, your comments, and your questions. As I'm going through this too, just keep in mind, we're going to be out there in a couple of weeks to do a detailed presentation. It'll be very similar to this, but the difference there will be you'll have a little bit more time to review the document. I'm hoping to go through and just get some very specific issues or very specific comments that you may have. And through the course of this adoption process, so including today, any feedback I get from Jennifer between now and when we're out there in a couple of weeks, and presenting to the steering committee and the planning commission. We'll also compile these notes along the way. And even when we get to city council, we'll have a memo that outlines all of the comments. So I want to present the same draft plan basically over the next 6 weeks. So it doesn't look like anything's changed. It won't be hard for people to track. But by the time we get to city council, our goal is to have both this document in a position to be presented, but also we'll have a memo that sort of outlines any comments or feedback that we receive from city staff, the planning commission, steering committee, and as well as anything that we've received online, since it's also been posted. So the draft plan structure itself broken up into 8 chapters. I'm going to go through each one of these. At the very beginning, we just talked about who's been involved, mayor and city council, planning commission, city staff, steering committee. So a lot of people have been involved, a lot of people from the public as well. Talk a little bit about that in the plan itself. For the plan introduction, so the first chapter, it's been broken up into a couple different subsections. We have about the plan, context, which includes regional settings, the community profile snapshot, and then an outreach overview. So just about the plan, it breaks it out into what the plan organization is, so the chapters that were created for this. We also talk about the planning process itself, those scope steps. So, project initiation, community engagement, when we did existing conditions, the vision process, and really the last 6 or 9 months, we've been in the citywide framework and ultimately this comprehensive plan document and adoption process. So these last 2 steps. We also have a little bit here about the history of Fremont, have some historical photos, just identifying, what the community looked like in the past versus, what it looks like now. So as we start to plan for it, we're trying to take that history into consideration. Identified a context map, so just where we are in the region, what the jurisdiction is, the planning area, what some of the influences are. So this is just a cropped version. We show quite a few other cities. So again, you can just see Fremont in context to not just Omaha, but Blair, West Point, also link it to the south. We continue to refine this existing land use. This existing land use is important. It is the foundation of the land use plan itself. So as those edits continue to come in, we continue to update the future land use plan as well. I know there's a few minor things that have come up since our previous meeting that we want to make sure we're just getting accurate on this map. Same thing with current zoning. So as current zoning continues to change, we'll be sure that this map is as current as it can be when we get towards the end of the actual comprehensive plan, knowing that that's going to be a big process as a part of the UDC project that we're doing as well. Just an overview of outreach, still working out maybe the best way to visualize some of this, but there have been a lot of different engagement opportunities throughout this process. We've met with the steering committee several times from the beginning of the project. We've been meeting with elected officials, both the planning commission and city council throughout the project as well. So I'm thinking either some kind of timeline or graphic, but what's important here is I just, the amount of times that we've been able to come back and present these steering committee materials and the planning, and to the planning commission and city council has been very helpful. Same thing with public outreach. We've held quite a few events. There was a business workshop. We talked about the student and youth workshops that we had conducted. There were online questionnaires. There were community-wide visioning workshops, downtown student design workshops. We did a downtown specific sub-area visioning workshop. We met with the BID and did a very similar workshop and presentation with them. And then we've had the draft plan open house. So a lot of different ways for people to participate in many different stages. Sometimes it was tell us what the issues are. Sometimes it was people responding to some of our initial concepts, all the way up to this draft open house, or draft plan open house, where people had an opportunity to really comment on the beginning of the plan. So any questions about that introduction chapter, any comments? I think I can't see anybody, so if you have comments, maybe to start talking.
Are we using the mic?
Go ahead.
I just curious as to whether or not you're keeping a running list of what you would consider to be major changes or anything that would give us some direction as to what's going on between the versions that we've seen or will be seeing. Will you be highlighting significant changes for us rather than we find them on our own?
Okay, was that Brad? I think that was Brad.
Yes, it was.
Kind of hear my, what I heard was, will we be keeping a running list of the comments or major revisions that are coming in? So is that your question?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so what we'll do is, it's not a very attractive looking document, but we'll create an Excel document and it'll basically take us between today. So this is our first opportunity. So between today and when we're out there to present with the steering committee and the planning commission, we'll snap that timeline, and any comments that come in will go on one sheet, and we'll identify who it came from, what the comment was. If they're minor revisions like a Scrivener error or a typo, might not get captured in this form. But if it's something that is of substance, we will absolutely put it into this, I'll call it like a database, a matrix. And what we'll do is as we present, so, if we get some comments over the next week or two, what I'll do is I'll present this draft plan. And then at the very end of each maybe section, or at the end of this overall presentation, I'll highlight the comments that have come in. We'll share those comments as well. Once staff has had a chance to take a look at them. So I do want a very transparent process as we go through this. It's important to me because now that this draft document is out in the project website, I want to make sure we're presenting the same draft plan throughout the next couple of presentations. That way it doesn't look like something's getting slipped through or that something's being missed or that we tried to change something at the last minute. So any big revisions are going to be discussed before we make those final changes. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Sound good? Any other questions or comments?
No other questions, Nick.
Okay, all right, thank you. So then the next chapter, probably the most discussed chapter, so I won't spend much time here, but it's just the identification of the vision, which we've been working on for almost over a year now. This section identifies the vision statement, the goals, and the objectives. And over to the left and in the document, we talk about what a vision statement is, what goals are, and what objectives are. And then this is the vision statement for Fremont, which is in the plan. And then this is just an abbreviation of the goals. So these are the main themes, the goals that we want to make sure the recommendations in the plan are helping to achieve. So going back again to things like balance and sustainable growth, a welcome and inclusive community, access to parks and trails, revitalize downtown. So there's different recommendations throughout the plan that are trying to achieve, these 10 different goals. So any questions about that? Again, I think this is probably the most vetted chapter. I think we've talked about it now for the last year, so there shouldn't be any big surprises as you go through that. Okay. Doesn't sound like any questions. Land use and development, also another chapter I think we've spent a lot of time talking about, but we've finally come to, in totality, what this chapter needs to be. So it's broken up into a couple of different sections. We talk about the establishment of the planning area, the growth and priority annexation areas, the land use plan itself, and then subsets of the land use plan are the residential areas plan, the industrial areas plan, and the commercial areas plan. So again, planning area, broken up into really 3 sequences here. There's that cyan city limits. There's the planning area, which is that orange, the deeper orange, and then that extra territorial jurisdiction, so your ETJ, which is shown in that yellow. And again, this just shows to the extent that we can plan for, but we've really focused many of the plan's recommendations to that planning area plus city limits. So that orange and that blue. And then within that, using that as a framework, we identified these growth areas. So the northern growth area, the eastern growth area, southern growth area, as well as the Port Authority. We also identified priority annexation areas. And this isn't to say that areas that aren't identified on this map shouldn't be considered for annexation. These are to say if there's an opportunity, we should try to annex these areas. You know, the city already has a policy of providing infrastructure or utilities outside of the municipal boundary. So it's not as pressing as you see in some other communities. This is really just to close the gap on what we call donut holes or areas that are surrounded by incorporated municipal properties and just closing out some of those gaps. So then when you do see development occurring in the future, it's a bit more contiguous and you're not creating some awkward boundary lines. So from that, we've identified what the land use plan needs to be for this area. The land use plan, again, we've gone through a series of revisions and discussions, you know, both with the joint committee, but also with the steering committee and with city staff. So this is something I could imagine we could spend a little bit of time on if we wanted to, either here or if you have a chance to take a look at it, we could talk about it in more detail when I'm back out there in person. The land use plan is then described each land use category. So we talk about residential uses, we talk about higher density and manufactured home neighborhoods. We talk about the commercial uses, so general, heavy, and downtown. Industrial uses, which include light industrial, heavy industrial, airport, and port authority. Again, giving each one of these a description, what they are, what the purpose is. And then the last one was community facilities, which includes public/semi-public and parks and open space. These descriptions and the purpose are important. As much as this is a guide, and this is sort of the direction that you want to see the types of uses and how they are built out in the future. This will also help to inform recommendations inside the UDC, which is obviously part of the next steps. I won't go into this because I know we've talked about it quite a bit, and there's been several comments along the way. So I just want to highlight what the intent of this overall residential framework is. The land use plan by design is a bit general when it talks about some of the land uses that are appropriate. So, you know, what we do up on the northwest side of the community in terms of the development that's appropriate, you know, not only is that single family detached, but what type of residential. It's in a new growth area. So the way it would grow would be a little bit different than what you're seeing in the core, where we may want to see more neighborhood maintenance or targeted reinvestment. So that's what this is doing. It's providing another level of specificity about how development in the residential areas should occur. And then we provided some residential profile information, so housing type, you know, the age of Fremont housing stock, what the cost burdens are, age distributions, just information that's helpful when you start to think about the residential population in your community and what that looks like. And then we provided some specific descriptions about what those residential improvement areas need to do. And those numbers tie back to what's happening on this page. So those numbers next to these, and I think we've talked about, you know, maybe a location map, like a small little key map, something like that might be helpful to help kind of guide the users you're going through this. An area that we thought would be very helpful or just a discussion point is the flooding in Fremont and what some of those challenges are when you're in a high risk flood hazard zone. So looking at some of the challenges that exist, we used some resources in the region. So we looked at the Nebraska State Hazard and Mitigation Plan and highlighted some of the programs and some of the strategies that they've utilized and how those dollars can be spent. We also talked about Bellevue, Nebraska, and some of the challenges that they faced during a flood and what their approaches were. I know Fremont's handled this in a couple different ways with their flooding issues. So it's just looking to other, not necessarily benchmark communities, but what other communities have done in Nebraska and what the guidelines are based on what the state of Nebraska has put out there in their hazard mitigation plan. So again, just a call out to give a little bit more insight on how to address some of the challenges that Fremont is facing. Oh, okay, let me go back. We talked about housing demand versus housing supply and attainable housing for all. This is something that came up quite a bit. Maybe people weren't using these words specifically, but talking about being able to afford the types of houses that they would like to be able to afford in Fremont or live, in some of the new types of residential preferences that you're hearing, not just in Fremont, but what we're seeing across the country. So talking about quality and design, neighborhood design, mobility and connectivity. This was one that I thought was really helpful where we talk about diverse housing options, and then there's a use type versus a product type. So we talk a lot about use. This is something planners do quite a bit, is we're talking about residential neighborhoods. We're talking about single family detached. I think it just gives a little bit more clarity on what we're talking about. So those housing types, what does single family detached actually look like? What do townhomes look like? What are duplexes, triplex and quadplex? Condominiums, I was trying to get another photo. That's what that gray box is. That needs to get replaced. And then multifamily apartments. And all we're trying to do here is just make it a little bit more clear about the types of housing and what those product types could look like in the future. This is a good mix. So when we talk about trying to get a mix of residential uses in Fremont, and that mix varies depending on what residential area you're in, these are sort of the housing product types that you have as an option. Commercial framework. So the commercial framework, very similar to what we'll talk about with the industrial and what we just talked about with residential, breaking down into commercial area maintenance, targeted reinvestment, commercial infill, and new growth. And again, just trying to give some guidance on what those retail trends are, what the office trends are, and how Fremont can respond to those opportunities in the future, and where we need to target certain aspects of what commercial or office space needs to look like. We provided some guidance specifically to those areas. Again, those numbers respond back to the call outs on the overall commercial areas map. And then we gave some additional considerations that the plan can give some guidance on, what do you do with aging commercial corridors? How do you address commercial character? That was something that we heard quite a bit along the corridors. How do you start to define what this commercial area could look like? Where are buildings located? What's the overall architecture or design, that type of thing. We also talk about access and mobility, which is one of the more critical, I think, challenges that a lot of commercial corridors, not just Fremont, but a lot of commercial corridors across the country are facing, is how you're accessing them, what that's doing to a sidewalk, or how many curb cuts there might be. So just providing some guidance on how to make those look a little bit better. We also talk about branding and marketing. So what that looks like, kind of working with the Chamber of Commerce and the GFTC, just to develop an economic development plan that would better brand and market your different commercial opportunities. And then the last area plan was the industrial framework. So just talking about the same thing, industrial area maintenance, targeted reinvestment, industrial infill, and new growth areas. Using that profile to help guide where some of the recommendations need to adjust to. The industrial improvement areas also have those specific call outs, just to provide some more detail. And then we have additional considerations. So mitigating incompatible uses, how you can buffer and landscape uses that aren't as desirable if they're adjacent to residential areas, just to kind of bridge that gap and avoid those conflicts between uses. And then that expanding employment opportunities was something that we've talked about a couple of times. And then managing truck traffic impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. So this is something the long range transportation plan talks about. We're just identifying where the Fremont freight routes are here and what some of those challenges are when you're starting to consider how you could manage or mitigate truck traffic and what that's doing to some of the neighborhoods that are surrounding. Now that I'm saying this out loud, it might be nice to show some of the residential areas on this map. So that might be something we could add to this. I'll make a note. So any questions about the land use plan? I know that's a lot to go over. Again, it's stuff that we've talked about quite a bit, but there are some slight changes that have been made over the last couple of months.
Hey, Nick, I just want to mention in your flooding section, I didn't see anything in regards to the Joint Water Management Board. And I just thought we probably should have that in there along with the entities. And that board should be part of the plan as we're continuing to meet quarterly and have a couple of studies that we're working on together. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's a good. I'll make sure we get that included. If we don't already have that talked about in the.
I just didn't see it in the flooding section at the first glimpse of it.
Okay. Yeah. That makes
If it's
sense.
somewhere else, it could be, but.
Any other comments or suggestions for the land use plan? Okay. So downtown sub area, again, not a lot has changed in this section as well. Based on the feedback, there were a couple of revisions just to some of the methodologies or some of the text, but I think overall this is very similar to the sections that we've talked about already. So the current planning integration, once we're done with this plan, the Fremont Comprehensive Plan, Long Range Transportation Plan, and the Unified Development Code will have all taken into consideration what we've been talking about in this downtown sub area. We did look at past plans and studies as well, just for reference points. So Blueprint for Tomorrow, the Downtown Revitalization Plan, Dodge County had a housing study that we also incorporated into this study, as well as some transportation documents, both in the past, but also using the Long Range Transportation Plan recommendations.
Hey, Nick, this is Jennifer.
Yeah.
Um, I met with the Downtown Business Improvement District Board the other day, the mayor and I did. And they have several, just give you a heads up, there's several comments that'll be coming forward your way. And I just wanted the council and the planning commissioners to know that as well, that they have given us feedback, and that'll be included in the list that you get as we move forward with the plan.
Okay, no, that'll be good. So BID comments. One comment. Okay. So outreach and engagement, a lot of different events have been hosted, both rolling up to what we talked about vision wide for the community, but also specific to the downtown. We hosted an event with the BID as well, and then did presentations. So they've had a couple of opportunities to participate and give us feedback. Sounds like Jennifer, I know Jennifer was meeting with them again. So based on what Jennifer just said, they still have some additional comments that we need to take into consideration and fold into this draft. So that'll be something that'll be a part of, like I said, Brad, that'll be something that we will summarize in that Excel sheet and then just discuss on how we want to handle that moving forward. We talk about the specific land uses that are appropriate in a downtown. So those mix of uses a downtown needs to, be a successful, vital area. And then looking at historic preservation and how to address upper story infill was something that came up quite a bit. So making sure that we're addressing what some of those challenges are and what some of the solutions might be. And then from there, we broke down the functional sub areas. So those functional sub areas were given some specific descriptions, and then overall, with the height, how to consider parking and what uses are appropriate. And then those are mapped on here. My guess is these might be where some of the comments are from the BID, Jennifer, but I'm not sure.
It was, Nick.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And then just identification of some of these catalyst sites. This might also be an area where they have some comments or questions. So these catalyst sites aren't meant to be development programs about specifically what needs to get built tomorrow, but really to set the stage for if a series of properties were to be consolidated, or if a block became available, through several different ventures, there's an opportunity to change what it is now. It's built form, the uses, what it's serving in terms of the users. So again, this isn't meant to say that the city is doing this tomorrow. It's meant to show that if an area were to redevelop, this is how it could redevelop using the functional sub area uses and built form that we've outlined, further up in the plan. Transportation framework, talking about the one-way, two-way conversions, the roadway reconfiguration. We do talk about and show some examples of how, you're approaching and what the connections are as you're coming into the downtown. That's also how you approach it when you're actually close to the downtown, but also how do you get routed to the downtown, when you're entering the community, what that signage or wayfinding looks like. We talk about complete streets and what some of those opportunities are for reprogramming those. So, it's a road diet or just a reimagining how these specific streets could be reconfigured. This is something that came out of the long range transportation plan, but it also came out of discussions when we first met and did the visioning workshop with local business and property and residents. And that was, I think, some interesting proposals or concepts. So I think being able to explore this was really helpful. And this is something that I think is more attainable than would typically be in a downtown just because of the current infrastructure. We talked about the catalyst roadway improvements for Broad Street and Military Avenue. I think that's something long-term that there's some really good opportunities there about changing what that look and feel is and how you're moving through and into the downtown. The urban design frameworks, just identifying things like the monumental gateways, public art, murals, parking lot screening, things that can just make a downtown feel more pedestrian friendly, feel more activated. Again, it's not just about the vehicular traffic that's moving through, but areas where, you know, as a pedestrian or a cyclist are moving through, does it create a comfortable space? An attractive space? And then talking about things like built form, and street wall. And we say street wall, when you look at that photo to the right, maintaining that consistent building footprint. It's right up to the sidewalk. It's got some nice height. It varies. You know, there's a 1.5 story, and then you got a 3 story, and that's okay because it's a maintained street wall. And then just talking about those height variations and what storefront should be if they want to support a vibrant downtown environment. We provide some examples about what streetscaping and pedestrian amenities need to be, intersection and crosswalks, sidewalks, wayfinding and gateways, murals and public art. So just all these different components that make up a successful downtown. And then that last component is the regulatory strategies approach. And this is already happening as we're starting to move into the UDC process. So taking a look now at these proposed or reevaluating the land uses that are currently there versus what we're talking about in the functional sub areas, and then establishing new district specific standards. You know, Jackie and her team will explore if it's an overlay district, new sub districts. Those are opportunities that we can provide a little bit more guidance on once we all kind of agree with these functional sub areas need to be in the comp plan. We'll also update the zoning map. We can review and update the sign ordinance as needed. And then there can be additional considerations. And I think this will be recommendations that'll come out of the plan and into the UDC, where, you know, is there a developer's how-to book? Is there a pattern book? Are there design guidelines? How do you want people to better understand what you're trying to accomplish here? How far do you want to take that in terms of regulation? And what do you want to keep more as guidance or recommendations? So any questions about the downtown sub area? I suppose not knowing what the feedback is from the BID, this might be something I hope that Jennifer and I can work on over the next few weeks. So when we do come back to present, we're all on the same page about what those options are.
Oh, yes. Councilman Jensen, go ahead.
Yeah, I was at this meeting with the BID, and one of the things they were concerned about downtown was that strip mall on 6th and Broaden Park down there, that what it looked like and what you thought it should look like. And I guess their concern was the building is new enough that nothing is really going to happen there unless there's a catastrophic event. And whether that needed to actually be in there or not.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I do think we identified a couple of different catalyst sites or redevelopment sites where just depending on how redevelopment could occur, what it should look like. But like I said, at any point, any site can redevelop. And I always think that's really important for people to recognize. If a property owner wants to redevelop a site and they want to put the money into it, you know, by right, they have the chance to do what they want to do. And I think that's why it's important to show with some of the changes that we're making to the functional land uses or the functional areas, what land uses are appropriate, what the built form could be, how buildings should be sited, where parking should be located. Those changes, I think, better represent if someone was to redevelop now in the future, if we're to change this in the zoning code down the line, this is what the expectation would be. Maybe not what's currently there, even if it's new, it could look something or should look something more like this. Sometimes picking those sites can be real, obviously challenging. So that's something we can work on with Jennifer to make sure that we get that using the right example. That's the best way to say that. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Community facilities. So working through this section, we identified a series of elements that go into the community facilities and infrastructure. So again, we talk a lot about what that requirement is for water, sewer, storm sewer, energy, which is a required element as part of a comprehensive plan in the state of Nebraska. We also talk about the service area analysis, which is very important. When we start talking about how you're actually servicing both existing infrastructure, so existing residential and commercial uses, but also future, that's something to be considered. So making sure that you're able to maintain that level of service that, you know, you're gonna wanna be able to provide, and you're timing that out or planning for it, and then providing specific policies and recommendations as it relates to the infrastructure here. We talked about natural gas and electricity. We looked at some of the public safety components. This is in conjunction with working with city staff and the various departments that have a lot of involvement in actually rolling this out and implementing it and managing it. So we've had a lot of good feedback from not just Jennifer, but other departments to make sure that we're talking about the right things as it relates to a comprehensive plan's responsibility. We also looked at specifically the police and some policies and recommendations there, as well as the health and education. So King Memorial, Fremont Public Schools, Metropolitan Community College, Midland, Methodist, Fremont Health. And again, just coming back to some of those key community service providers and making sure that they're incorporated into the plan and some of the specific options in the future are considered. The last piece of this is just the parks and open space and recreation. So identifying, working with the Fremont's Parks and Recreation Department, identifying areas, you know, that just need to be continued to be monitored, maintained, especially when you start to look out ahead and you're identifying some of these new residential areas. You want to make sure that your service areas are lined up with those, that you're not creating deficient parks and open space throughout the city. So again, as new development occurs, you want to make sure that parks and open space, both passive and active, are incorporated in those types of developments. So any questions about the community facilities chapter? Okay. And then natural areas. So we talked about the Platte River, Fremont Lakes State Recreational Area, the Platte River and Elkhorn River, the lakes and streams, floodplains, wetlands. So there's a lot of different components that got built into this. And that was from our sort of original, this is what we want this chapter to be. It's sort of evolved into talking about the rivers and the lakes, the Platte River, Elkhorn River, talking about Rawhide Creek. These are some of the significant waterways in and around Fremont. Talking about the Luther Hormel Memorial Park, Fremont Lake State Recreational Area, Wildwood Park, and then specific recommendations that would go along with those. You know, down the line, them being or this being something that the city is going to need to really take into consideration. They're both amenities, but they also need to be protected down the line. So we want to make sure that development that's occurring isn't creating negative impacts in these areas. Floodplain was certainly something that was talked about throughout this planning process. So just providing a little bit more specificity about what the 100-year floodplain is and what that zone looks like, 500-year floodplain, what floodways are, and then helping to map that. I feel like this has been a helpful map, both in identifying where residential or commercial development could occur in the future, or more so where it shouldn't occur, and then how to handle that. So again, you can almost see where the planning area starts to evolve and come out of. And a lot of that is driven by the floodplains and some of those challenges. And then stormwater management recommendations. So this was something that had come out of some of the previous planning work that was done in Fremont, but we tried to bolster it, to provide some more specificity about what storm sewer management should look like, how on-site stormwater management should occur, why it should occur, and what some of the different strategies like bioswales, green roofs, rain gardens. I think green roofs are maybe not as much of a priority, where I think rain gardens, bioswales, naturalized detention, and infiltration trenches, those can be very successful in a much lower lift in terms of costs and maintenance. So those are the types of recommendations that we provided here about green infrastructure. And then just talking about limiting development in the floodplain is something that certainly needs to be considered. Platte River flood protection and levee. Talk a lot about tree canopies and what some of those benefits are and what the assets are, and then different ways to preserve those tree canopies and different considerations. And then the last, oh no, that was it, sorry. And then if there's any questions about the natural areas chapter, take it now.
I don't know if you know about this, or I have to ask Jody, why was part of our park system yet today? I'm not sure I'm seeing it in the list here.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
93, okay. You mentioned that, but I mean the list of the parks themselves though. I'm looking at page 86.
Are you asking for a list of the parks?
Yeah, it's got page 86 has the parks in it, but then should that be also in that list of parks besides the other notation on what page is that? 93.
Yeah, I can take a look. So you're looking for an additional list. So I know that's a part of the community facilities chapter. Are you
I don't
saying you
know.
want it also included in the natural areas?
Yeah. If you could
Okay.
look at that.
So a lot of parks though aren't necessarily natural areas so much as they're programmed open space, but I can take a look and see if maybe there's like a condensed version of that list.
All right, thank you.
I see what you're saying. I got it now. Okay. Any other questions about this chapter? All right. Transportation. So the transportation chapter is a condensed version by far. It's a condensed version of the long range transportation plan. And I know Jason's on the call. I know tonight we're not really talking about specifics in the long range transportation plan. But what I do want to make sure, if we don't get to it today, what I would like to make sure is when we do meet, again, to go through this, are there elements of the long range transportation plan that we missed that need to be a part of the comprehensive plan? And again, we're not trying to recreate that longer document, that long form document inside of the comprehensive plan. We just want to make sure that transportation related issues or recommendations that are relevant to land use planning or infrastructure planning are either discussed in here, highlighted in here, that we didn't miss anything. So some of the key takeaways that we see in the long range transportation plan that needed to be carried forward into the comprehensive plan were just talking about the roadway classifications and roadway networks as a significant impact on how people move through and around Fremont. We talk about some of those functional classification types and description. So again, pulling that from the plan just to give people a better understanding of what these classifications are, what they mean. The Southeast Beltway, I think, is we all know is a very significant project that's currently under construction. It's very, once it's completed, there's a lot of impacts that you can anticipate seeing, both, I would say mostly for the good, about what could alleviate in terms of traffic, how that might impact what's happening in the downtown. So again, I think keeping your eye on this project and monitoring it both through its completion, but also evaluating it post, just to see if there's any sort of added benefits or any additional enforcement that needs to occur to take some of the truck traffic away from areas that we're trying to see a removal of truck traffic if possible. The long range transportation plan identifies several improvements. I feel like I'm speaking to Jason's part. So if there's things, Jason, that you want to chime into, definitely chime in on, feel free. But we talked about a lot of different projects or roadway alternatives that could be incorporated into or as part of future investments or future improvements. So, talking about like a grade separation, so what that would look like and where those would occur, managing these different truck route options or traffic management, what traffic calming could look like and when that should occur. There was a lot of talk about new road diets or new roadway infrastructure. So I think making sure that that's considered in the future, and I would time that out with also public and private investment. So if new development starting to occur, in the southeast side of Fremont or on the northeast side of Fremont, you're going to want to make sure that those roadways are able to meet that capacity, meet that demand. We talked about some of the projects like these. Again, a lot of this is just pulled from the long range transportation plan and isolated here just to give people an understanding of the types of projects and what the purpose would be. We do cite, for more information, make sure to review that more detailed study. We talk about committed projects versus vision projects, which I think are really helpful. So there's projects that are already on the books, either they're going to happen or they're planned on, where there's some that are just vision projects, and down the line, these would be sort of what ifs or main shots if you're able to do these, but they may not be programmed or they may not have budgets set aside for them specifically. The bicycle and pedestrian network, so just talking about the types of improvements. So if it's paved, if it's traffic calming, shared side path, that type of thing. Complete streets. So I know we've talked about this a couple different times. The graphic on the right is a good example of, 2-lane north, 2-lane south, and a more complete approach there would be adding a bike lane, removing 2 lanes, adding a turn lane. So it's just a more complete street in a safer configuration. It doesn't always move the same level of traffic, but where you're seeing traffic count starting to reduce or where it's viable, we've identified options for traffic calming. Military is a really good example of taking a before and turning it into something like this, where you have a bike lane, a turn lane, that type of thing. And then freight was a big discussion point throughout the planning process. You know, both just from a mitigation effort or minimizing some of the sounds, but it is a significant. I mean, it's a significant contributor to Fremont. So it's not that we're trying to eliminate all the freight; we're just trying to minimize or reduce its impacts on residential areas, at some of the crossings, that type of thing. So talking about truck and train traffic, air freight, and then what we can do to manage that freight or those freight impacts. And then one of the last things that we did talk about in the plan are just public transit. So public transit observations, what an intercity bus system could look like, and then additional studies that are out there. I think this was stuff that came out of a series of discussions at the beginning of the project, both at a community level, but also in some of the visioning workshops. So I think bringing that forward, having that discussion and putting that out there is a big part of what a comprehensive plan needs to do. And that's a pull out of some of the other studies that we've seen in this area. So any questions about the, what I'll call the condensed transportation chapter inside the comprehensive plan from the long range transportation chapter?
Jason, I got a question here. Living Street, as far as the illustration here, the representation on page 108 on the map, we have an at-grade crossing at Linden. I don't see marked. Oh, it's hard to see that. It might be under Linden. Their avenue or something. Which
Just wanted to confirm that we've got a crossing shown at Linden.
okay.
I'll add that to the list and we'll just go ahead and confirm in the map.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, this is Jason. Hi, everyone.
That's okay, I know it was.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. All right, last chapter is implementation. And I think you got a little bit of a preview of this when we were there last time, but it's broken up into three sections. So plan administration, amendment process, or what it's like to use this plan in the action matrix. And so using the plan, regularly use of the comprehensive plan, it talks about what the purpose is, how to use this plan on a more regular basis, how the planning commission needs to use this as their tool in terms of evaluating projects in the future. Using this in conjunction with the zoning code is a very effective way to see the type of development that you want to see. There's education and training components to this. Continuing the outreach. So I think, you don't need to do it to the extent that it was done through this planning process, but using the same approach or using this to check back in with the community to make sure that, there aren't some new directions or new policies that need to come out of those discussions. This is meant to be a 15, 20-year plan, but things change in a couple of years, and there's always, or often there's amendments to a comprehensive plan based on just new development trends, or you start to receive a lot of feedback from the development community or a builder. You want to make sure that you can continue to use that or to build off of that process, the outreach process. The plan amendment process, so the types of amendments, if it's minor amendments or major amendments, annual progress report. So I think using this as an evaluation process too, just to make sure that, if there's been challenges in administering this, or if you're not able to incorporate this into your CFP, whatever that might be, this section kind of outlines what that amendment process needs to be and how to use this moving forward. And then the last section is the action matrix. I always find this to be a really helpful section in terms of taking all of the plan's recommendations and flipping them into more specific actions. So basically taking the previous 100 pages and trying to get it condensed into specific action items that different groups, so city administrator's office, chamber of commerce, housing authority, planning and zoning department, like whoever it might be, there might be specific sections or specific roles that each person needs to play to get this actually completed. And then we gave a time frame. So, you know, S, short term, 1 to 2 years. M is midterm, L is long term, and then O is ongoing. So there's some things that just require ongoing attention or ongoing refinements along the way. So you'll find that to be the case in a lot of ones that are related to maybe some zoning. There might be some ongoing just monitoring or enforcing. But we did provide this for each chapter and then tried to break it down by the subsections as well. This is a very detailed section. So I would say once you get to this, you know, having read the entire plan or a majority of the plan, I think you'll see like these are specific check marks that once you start to check these off or finish, these are some of the first places that we see communities go in and start to make amendments to. You know, they've completed enough of them, or, you know, they got the low hanging fruit. Now they're really struggling with some of the last couple. So they need to maybe break them down into smaller pieces or smaller chunks. But I do think this is a section that can be very helpful in terms of trying to realize the overall vision and the goals. So any questions about that last chapter, the implementation chapter? Okay. All right. So next steps. What we want to do is, someone's started done. The next steps is for plan approval and adoption. So we have a draft plan presentation for the joint committee, which is today. So that's what we're doing right now. On the 19th of September, we'll be out there to present to the steering committee in the afternoon. And then in the evening, we'll be presenting to the planning commission. Ideally, that's for their approval. Kind of back to Brad's original question. Basically, from each one of these presentations, we're going to be tracking comments that come in, you know, who they're coming from, ideally who they're coming from, what kind of comment it is. So we'll have a running list and a memo that we'll present. So, you know, these are the comments that come in. This is our recommendation about how to either, yes, we should pull that in, or, you know, we don't necessarily agree with that comment and here's why, or, you know, here's our opinion. We need direction from either the planning commission or from council to know, is that a change that we need to make in the plan? I would say we get towards the end here and comments start to come in that could completely derail what one of our original goals were. And I think that's where we, you know, we'll provide our recommendation, but working with staff, planning commission and city council, you know, we'll ultimately make the decision that we need to before this plan is officially adopted. Even on October 11th, and I guess this is up to both this city council and also Jennifer's recommendation. There might be some revisions that still need to happen. So the plan itself could be adopted with potential revisions. But I want to make sure that at that October 11th, and even going back to that September 19th presentation to Planning Commission, that you have an understanding of what comments are out there. So that's what will be happening in this approach. So then on the 23rd, we'll deliver that memo to city staff. And then on the 11th, we'll come out to the city council, hopefully for adoption. And then based on any of the comments that come out of those memos, or out of that memo, we'll revise and complete the final comprehensive plan, prepare it and send it off to the city, and you'll be able to start, you know, breaking this out and get it out into the community. So with that, I know that was a lot to go over. Any questions about this timeline or any questions about how we plan on doing this moving forward? No? Jennifer, should I stop sharing my screen? I don't know if there's any additional questions, just kind of overall. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, you can start sharing for right now. We do have some members of the public here. I don't know if they have any comments or questions.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, very good.
No questions?
No, we'll see you back out here, I guess, on the 19th, right? For the planning commission and the steering committee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so all I want to say, so before that meeting, and I'm sure you've all read this, you know, front to back, but before that meeting, just make sure that you had an opportunity to review it. If you have any questions, you know, this is that preview of the presentation. My presentation on the 19th is going to be very similar. I'm hoping this is more of a discussion and people are coming to me with issues or comments that they want to address, or we did a great job and there's nothing to change. I mean, whatever it ends up being, this is that preview presentation.
And I guess I would add that if anybody has any comments or questions or potential conditions that they would like to see, let me know. We can compile those into the memo. And then as we move through that process, they can be considered as we move forward.
Well, it's exciting to be able to get to the point where we're presenting a plan. I know we've had since 2020, we started this, so countless meetings, lots of time invested. So it's good to see we're at this point right now. Okay, if there's no other comments, I would take a motion to adjourn the city council. Councilman Gibson,
So moved.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second that.
Gibson. Ellis. Hannah.
Yes.
Yerger. Jensen.
Yes.
Sukram. Yeah. Lakeman. Yes. Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Okay, and then the planning commission.
Actually, Mayor, you didn't have a quorum.
There's
of
no
your
quorum.
Planning commission, so
Okay.
I don't think you need to adjourn a meeting that didn't get called.
Thank you for those that came. All right, we're